Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Citizen of the Future, and this is my video to give you guys some extra information to research, to look into, some insights into what I've been digging into. So a little bit about myself. I've been following blockchain and DLT ecosystems since 2018, and I like to say I'm a citizen of the future because I focus on the future, what's being built. Some people focus on the past. Some people are stuck just going day by day and they don't actually care about the bigger picture. But I care about the bigger picture. I want to see what mainstream media isn't telling us. And so that is what inspires me to research and share my content and share mind maps and share this stuff that I feel is being missed that should be covered by the mainstream. Some of you may have seen my work before, and I like to create utility art through things that I find, through things that I research, and I like creating visuals. So what I'm going to cover today is welcome to my mind map. This is information that I've put together that I'm going to talk about and try and give you guys some of my insight from what I've researched and what I've learned and why I chose to write about what I wrote about. So let's just dive into it. So first things first, the grid. I created this visual to show you guys, we're not talking about a little town. We're not talking about little, small, medium enterprises. We're talking about the big key players. We're talking about global trade, supply chain, trade finance. And I'm going to be covering consortiums, companies, DLT ecosystems, partnerships, initiatives, you name it. I'm going to be digging into it and sharing some of my research and some of my thoughts. So I want you guys to think the grid is a bunch of global powerhouse entities that work together to power the system of the world. And so you really need to take a step back and you need to realize we're learning about fourth industrial revolution stuff that is being built every day. And so these are some of the main key players that you should look into and research. And none of this is financial advice. No, I'm giving you guys my utility theory and just stuff off my research and how I piece it all together. So the first thing I want to dive into is talking about the shipping crisis. So I give you guys three of the major problems with the global supply chain and trade finance industry. And here, this was in October that I posted this. If you didn't know there's a shipping crisis going on in the world right now, what if paper is a part of the cause of the backlog? Because it is. It takes time to verify paper. It's slow compared to just scanning a QR code. So now that we're moving over to these digital trade ecosystems, and you have documents on a blockchain that utilizes DLT for settlement, you can now have QR codes. It's instead of paper, you have just a QR code. You have applications on your phone, and it just cuts the time down drastically. And here, it's funny, the day after I wrote that thread, the ICC posted this, look at right the day after, the world's largest economies could boost trade flows by $9 trillion in 5 years if they shift to digital trade documents. Holy smokes. And so this is the article that they shared. And they're just talking about, by 2026, it could be improved by about $9 trillion. It says it would cut down the time it takes for cross-border deals up to 81%. Currently, international trade relies on billions of paper documents and antiquated laws which date back to the 16th century. So look at this. An ordinary trade transaction involves up to 27 documents, can take 3 months, and cost businesses up to $80,000. And I read another quote somewhere where it says the use of paper is more expensive than actually moving the shipping containers all the way across the world. So that's a huge problem. Let's see here. So now back to here. So now let's get into my graphics. I'm just going to explain the graphics just in person here as we're talking about this. So here's the paper-based trade finance industry. It's a mess. You have exporters, you have importers, you have issuing banks, correspondent banks, you have export entry trade offices, you have customs, and all this requires paper being sent back and forth. And all the trade laws in global jurisdictions go off of English law, Bill of Exchange Act 1882, which requires wet ink signatures. And that means they do not validate digital documents. So here's just showing, this number right here, 28.5 billion trade documents. That was from the UK's Queen's speech, where they quoted that they're working on trade digitalization now. So when you calculate that into height, it's literally 39,187 statues tall, like statues of liberty tall. I created this visual to show that's how much paper there is going through the global supply chain trade finance industry. It's 2022. This number is still super low. So the Digital Container Shipping Association estimated that only 0.1% of bills of lading are issued electronically. And this is because the infrastructure is not there for digital documents yet. There is not proper legislation. So this is just showing the cost of paper. Paper is super expensive. And so now let's move into the future. So I give you guys the problems, and now I'm giving you guys some solutions. And I only had so much to write. So it had to be short and sweet just to get the points across. So for DLT, documents on a global ledger. So this was inspired by Sullivan Law. The DLT-enabled future. So instead of using paper all back and forth, if you have a digital document, it removes all manual labor. You don't have to wait a week to get your paper to come in through a carrier. And so it creates flawless automation. So the digital document solution that I chose to show you guys is one of my favorites. It's called Enigio Time. It's a company based out of Stockholm, Sweden. They are part of the ITFAs. If you don't know who that is, the International Trade Forfeiting Association. And they have a digital negotiable instruments initiative, which is basically digitalizing documents. Big shout out to Andrè Casterman. I've gained a lot of knowledge from following him, and if you guys haven't followed him on Twitter, you guys should. He's a very smart man. But this is a difference. There's the paper. The way paper is, you got to store that paper for years. Or there's the digital document solution that Enigio provides. So as you can see, there's the document is stored in a server and then settled through the blockchain. So anytime there's a change made to a document, it's timestamped on the blockchain. It only costs a fraction of a cent, and it settles in 2 seconds. And so here you go. So the problem with scanning a file and say a PDF version of a file is you can't tell the difference between the original and all the changes when it comes to global trade. So, but on DLT you can now, thanks to this technology. They are also interoperable with ISO 222. And which is the global banking messaging standard that's being upgraded across financial institutions worldwide. They're also Enigio software is also interoperable with MT 798. And with this Enigio software, you can send documents to an email address using their software. So if I zoom right here, here's a perfect example. So paper has great options because you can tell the difference between an original and a copy. Who has possession, transferability, presentability, data privacy. And Trace can do a trace original or Enigio can do this exact same thing, and it's immutable on a ledger. And now when you think about paper has so much stuff that isn't machine readable, so much data that could be collected, but paper, it goes to waste. There's no data collected. It's all manual processes. But when you think about digitalizing documents in global trade, I want you to just think of this on the bigger picture. So these are all data points that are on a bill of lading, on a transfer record, and this is all data that can be used. That if you use digital documents, you can literally search through by keyword searching. So you want, who had this invoice, etc., etc. So these are all usable data points that you can get from a digital document, and that's why digitalization is so important. One, it's flawless. Two, you get all the data points. Yeah. Okay, so we went over that, and so that's a huge thing. And the next thing that I'm going to just quickly go over is the ITFA also has the Trade Finance Distribution Initiative. And that is a main player of that is TradeTeq. So what is TradeTeq? This is TradeTeq here. So I took these two images from their website, and then I put this in there to show you guys what it is. TradeTeq bridges the technology gap in the $15 trillion trade finance market. 1.5 billion process volume, 30,000 invoices financed, 5,000 corporates funded. The technology that powers asset distribution. One platform. We support transparent and frictionless transactions. Originators and investors can efficiently access the trade finance market and better understand, execute, and manage investments. It's fully interoperable. Our cloud-based technology and API integration create a seamless user experience, reduce costs, and eliminate error-prone manual processes. So what TradeTeq is, it's an NFT exchange for tokenizing trade assets and having global investors be able to invest in short-term securities and trade finance assets. So their goal, we specialize in trade finance, facilitating seamless collaboration across the entire investment lifecycle through one secure, scalable, centralized platform. For capital markets, TradeTeq securitization as a service makes trade finance accessible for institutional investors. TradeTeq transforms trade finance assets into capital market products. So trade finance is a really fragmented industry, and there's not a lot, it's very illiquid. So for example, I created this visualization of the trade finance gap. As I said, that was a problem in there. So I created this as a visualization. So as this is the amount of the money that the banks are able to provide for trade finance funding. So this is why 40% of SMEs are denied, because they can't get, the banks don't have enough money to lend out. So in 2020, there was a $1.7 trillion trade finance gap. And here where I showed you guys with the ICC article, they say $5 trillion is needed to recover to pre-COVID levels. So these red circles is the lack of funding. That's how much money is needed, but it can't be provided by the banks because they don't have enough funding. It's really sad. So I created this visual just to show you guys that digitalization is helping close the gap, because it's allowing trade finance to be an asset class that can be investable by anyone. If you own an office, you can now invest in digital tokens that will be backing trade finance assets. So this was just a visualization of tokenization. You get a real world asset, you turn it into a digital token, and then that can be sold on an NFT, on a trade finance NFT exchange, and then that can be, say you have $1 million worth of grain, that can be fractionalized between multiple investors. So instead of having to find one investor for it, you can have 5, you can have 10 investors, you can have 100 investors if need be. What else? Okay, so now I want to show you this. The TFD initiative. Quickly mentioned it, Trade Finance Distribution. Look it up on Google. Who are the members? Who's a part of this? Well, they're a main partner with the ITFA. Some of their asset managers, so this is huge. You got Santander, Pemberton Alliance, AGO, come down here, a bunch of banks, the Commonwealth Bank, London Forfeiting, Deutsche Bank, SMBC, Standard Bank, Standard Chartered, Banco do Brasil, HSBC, Lloyds Bank, ING, QNB, so a bunch of huge players. Trade Finance Global, My Credit Service, I don't know who they are, Accelerated Payments, sponsors, World of Account, the ICC, the International Chamber of Commerce. I'll show you how big they are right after this. Technology Partners, SureComp, Coriolis, Intex, TradeTeq, so that's the NFT marketplace there. XDC network, wow. XDC is a major piece of infrastructure for the trade finance distribution. So now let me take you down and show you this. So here is a visual. The TFD initiative is establishing the largest business community of trade originators, funding platforms, credit insurers, institutional funders, and their service providers committed to increase the level of automation and transparency in trade asset and risk distribution on the basis of technology based market practices. The members of the TFD are follows. Here's a bunch of these ones. And as you can see down here, TradeTeq is the TFD initiative's infrastructure provider. So this is the NFT platform that they're going to use for trade finance assets between all these. And as you guys know, if you looked closely here, it's able to provide white label tokenage repackaging for trade originators. So it can allow banks to produce their own tokens under their own name, because it's a white label solution and it's built on top of XDC. So XDC is used as the settlement infrastructure. And just to give you some more value, I want to show you a research project that I did with another researcher here. His name is XX1133122111. Straight up, just he's a deep researcher into utility DLT, and me and him, we mapped this out. And so this is an example. So Andrè Casterman, salute to you, sir. He is a man of he does a role of 20 people. He's a trade finance pioneer, and he's worked with Swift for 20 plus years. He's worked with the ICC. And this is his resume right here. So he's a main guy at the ITFA. He's pushing the DNI initiative. He's an advisor with World of Account, which you've seen was a part of the TFD initiative. He's a contributor to Trade Finance Global. He's also an advisor for the XTC Foundation. And so this is just to give you a visualization of, these are some TFD members from around the globe. And he's also a board member at TradeTeq. And just as a quick explanation, originators upload assets to TradeTeq platform, assets automatically and continuously allocated to one or more investors based on pre-agreed criteria. Data provided and shared via file-based integration, API, or direct database connection. So how it works is originators upload assets to TradeTeq and are automatically allocated to investors through API and direct database connections. So they choose how much money, like what kind of percentages, like if it's like invoice factoring, like how much percent they're going to pay for borrowing the funds, or if they're selling funds, whatever. So then step 2, the assets. So once it's tokenized, the assets are repackaged as NFT tokens that represent the off-chain assets over a decentralized blockchain network, which is XDC network. And then you go to 3, institutional investors buy NFT tokens, and the new token holder receives legal entitlement to that asset or package of assets. So just like my diagram up in the top before. So yeah, so that's a good breakdown, but definitely research these topics. These are bringing trade finance to the 21st century. And let's see here. Here's how big the ICC is. One sec. Why is it not scrolling in? Here we go. So the ICC represents 45 million companies in 100 plus countries. And I think if I... yeah, here's the other one. And they're the voice of business at intergovernmental level, and they represent 1 billion employees worldwide across the globe. So the ICC is huge, and they are big trade digitalizers. So back to here. The next, so yeah, and then also from my studies, I just wanted to show you guys this. This is just a good visualization. To people that don't know what blockchain looks like, this is what blockchain looks like. You know, you got a seller and you got a buyer. Goes through a transaction which gets attached to the global ledger. Nodes run the network, and yeah, you know, you got your address, you got the size, you got all the other extra information, date, time stamped. So one thing that I forgot to mention when I'm talking about blockchain and DLT is smart contracts. Smart contract automation. It's a contract that executes automatically. Here's a good visual that I thought I'd share from, this was from ING Wall Street Journal back in 2017. And how it works is, one, it starts off with the buyer and issuing bank create an electronic letter of credit, guaranteeing payment if the order is fulfilled. 2, the seller and advising bank gather documents with specifics on the oil shipment and create an invoice. 3, the oil is loaded onto the vessel. 4, the inspector checks the quality and quantity of the oil and issues certificates that are added to the smart contract. So this is on chain. So you now have a digital twin of a real life asset. So now as this oil is whatever this asset, as it's moving between, say it's coming from Russia to Canada, every stop that it's going and it's changing hands, QR code is scanning and it's updating the smart it's updating on chain. So 5, once it passes inspection and everything's good, the agent for the vessel issues the bill of lading, which details the shipment and is used as a receipt and certificate of origin. 6, shipment, the oil is shipped to its destination. Documents are verified by the smart contract for compliance and accuracy. 7, title and payment. If documents are found to be compliant, the title of goods is transferred to the buyer and payment is transferred to the seller. And then 8, blockchain-based smart contract. All documents and records of ownership are added to the smart contract in unaltered blocks. So now you have a global ledger. It's auditable 24/7. You can find malicious actors. It's now moving to where in trade people are being given LEIs, legal entity identifiers. And as things move more and more digital, basically the bad actors won't even be able to participate in trade because they need to have a legal entity identifier. If they don't have that and it's not attached to all their invoices and that, then they're sort of going to run out of ways to move things. But that's the digital system we're moving into. It's all auditable. It's 24/7 running full time. And yeah, so I'm going to give this off here, just a little bit of closing here, by showing you this article, just as proof that I want to back my statements. I want to back my research. And as I talk about this digital trade transformation, here's an article from the World Bank, March 2nd, 2021. The digital transformation of trade finance, an urgent present and a bright future. Trade is the lifeblood of the global economy. It drives growth and competitiveness. It promotes fairness. It spurs innovation and efficiency. When trade flows in a rule-based system, jobs, wages, and investment increase. Underpinning trade at every stage of the global supply chain, trade finance. By providing liquidity and cash flows and lowering risks, trade finance ensures that buyers receive their goods and sellers receive their payments. Simply put, the movement of goods across borders doesn't occur without trade finance. Yet the world faces a massive persistent trade finance gap, by some estimates as large as 6.5 trillion. So that's even larger than what I have in my diagram. The largest I found before this was 5 trillion. So the COVID crisis arrived during a transformative period for trade finance, largely through digitalization and the emergence of new platforms. Ooh, hint, hint. The sector now has an opportunity to continue its evolution and emerge stronger from the crisis. We see three key trends in the world of trade finance. First, banks, financial institutions, and technology providers need to work together to ensure that liquidity is getting to the places where it's needed most. Right? We need to close that trade finance gap. That is what the world needs to do to get back to normal. Small, medium enterprises need that capital funding so their businesses can run. Because without that, they can't run their business. We haven't seen anything like the reduction in liquidity of the global financial crisis of 2008. The pandemic has caused banks to focus their funding on establishing relationships. This flight to quality has left many worthy businesses, particularly SMEs in developing countries, without an option for trade finance. So what I've explained here in this video. This risk aversion from global banks needs to be remediated. In the short term, multilateral development banks can provide vital support. But in the longer term, local financial sectors will need to strengthen their ability to finance their own trade, and that's where new platforms can play a major role. So XDC isn't the only trade platform. There's multiple digital trade platforms out there. There's multiple that will succeed. It won't be like, there will never be just one. There will always be different options out there. For the second trend we see is a more intense movement toward innovative technologies and digitization. For an industry that has been based on paper for centuries, the embrace of technology hasn't been instigated by COVID-19, but it has been accelerated. The procurement supercycle at banks will last long after pandemic has subsided. To fully reap the benefits of technologies, the entire trade ecosystem, banks, regulators, border agencies, trade bodies, corporates, must work together to apply digital innovation and drive efficiencies. Every collaboration is a must. Working as a team, the globe needs to adopt common standards. Teamwork makes the dream work. Jurisdictions around the world need to enact common frameworks. The third trend affecting trade finance is now related to product innovation, heralded by the rampant digitization, new platforms as tools to aggregate and analyze huge volumes of data in real time. It can drive intelligent models for banks, enabling them to innovate around financing solutions in the same way that their customers are innovating around products. Crazy. So yeah, just finish it off here. Data collection and analysts can be a boon to the industry as platforms collect granular data on transactions. The ability for banks to understand how financing can support sustainable activities is immeasurably enhanced. The current landscape is challenging, but we are hopeful. Despite the hardship caused by the pandemic, the crisis has also reinforced a desire for banks, global institutions, and technology providers to work together. And going back to it, the grid, collaboration, the ICC, the ITFA. This is just trade finance connections. I'm not integrating outside ones. This is everyone must work together on global trade digitalization. And just picture it. You have 28.5 billion trade documents in the globe. And if you get data and you have your computer is able to sort through millions of invoices, being able to search whatever piece of information off an invoice, you can do that now once that happens, once this full digitalization happens. And I find it very convenient that this huge transformation is taking place and the mainstream media only covers COVID-19, the Ukrainian war. It only covers stuff that keeps all of us in the past, so we don't partake in following this transformative period in history, because the world will only digitalize once, and that's happening as we speak. And once it goes digital, that's it. Then it's just automation, flow. And there's one last thing I forgot to show you. Dun 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 dun. Seems like it never ends here, guys. One sec. Today, so heavily paper-based. So this was just in the UK. 4 billion trade documents, they say. But the other one, I go from the Queen's speech because she said 28.5. So limited access to finance. So the $1.5 trillion trade finance gap, but there's other ones that say 5. Outdated laws. So here, like I just said, not accepting title documents in digital form and no standards. And what will they see in 5 years? Digitize the flow of information in trade. Data is now digital. That's why they say data is gold. Reduce the cost of trade. Update and align regulations. Develop digital standards. And that's what we're seeing. Interoperability, seamless trade flow between different technology platforms and stakeholders. No legal barriers and aligned systems. Cost of finance attainable to all stakeholders. The trade finance gap is closed. All trade documents handled in digital form. No more of this paper. No more having paper to have to change hands up to 200 times and cost a business up to $80,000 for that documentation, for all that trouble that they got to go through. And since I'm talking about XDC network, I just wanted to hear you guys can just look over this, but it's just a comparison of some of these things. And then here's XDC. It's up to 2,000 trades per second, super scalable. And right here, I'll show you where I think we are. The 4 stages of digitization. This is from BCG Analysis. Electronic platforms and straight-through processing. The use of electronic platforms instead of bilateral agreements designed by traders. Electronic clearing of OTC trades. Full application of straight-through processing. So we're just seeing, we're like at the pre-begin, we're just seeing these platforms begin to gain adoption, to get through their proof of concepts, and to actually being used in trade. So it's a slow and steady. We're looking at like a 5-10 year time frame before I think we see full automation in the supply chain. But then it gets into automation based on algorithms. Then it gets to data-driven assistance. So then you take this information that is being collected through all these data points, and these big CEOs can just sit back at their computer and they can look at all the information that their business has been dealing with, and they can make business decisions from that information that was pulled and you can use AI to dig through all this dirty data and make it into clean data, because you have billions of data points, and you're like, okay, well, I want to niche it down to what's relevant to what I need to make this business decision. And then one day we will see full digitalization. We're going from supply chain to a value chain, which includes data collection, pre-processing, analysis, interpretation, portfolio optimization, and trade execution. Most of the trading organizations skilled in or orientated toward mathematics and software engineering. Potentially includes high-frequency trading strategies. But yeah, so okay, guys, well, that's it for today. And well, I hope you enjoyed my video. Make sure that if you liked some of this content, if you got something from it, let us know. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, how we can improve, what you want to see in next sections. Yeah, so make sure you like, comment, subscribe to the report. You know, for what, $20 for 2 Subway sandwiches, you can get information of a lifetime that can put you ahead of the herd. Anyways, guys, I just want to say, check out my YouTube, check out my Twitter. I've got a lot of deep RegTech dives, blockchain, DLT, different big picture dives. And I like try and break things down as easy as possible in blue collar terms. And yeah, so I'd like to say one last thing before I exit out of here. I now consider you a citizen of the future, because you are now aware of pieces to the next generation financial system, a system empowering the fourth industrial revolution. So my suggestion is start researching, start learning, and step out your comfort zone. Thank you for watching. Citizen of the Future out.